Ladies and gentlemen, today's the 2nd of August. What we're looking at here is geoengineering. I just got finished addressing the Fullerton City Council last night as they were presented with a climate change declaration that they were asked to pass, committing the city to green policies and green energy. And some of the people that were involved in getting this on the agenda were actually people that had advanced degrees with Cal State Fullerton, and scientists and environmentalists. And when I raised the issue of geoengineering, nobody batted an eye, nobody had any questions. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why the weather is changing. Do you see these lines in the sky? They have dispersed metallic nano compounds at very high levels in the atmosphere. These are hit with phased array radar, next-rad radar, wireless infrastructure all over the place, including the HARP up in Gakona, Alaska, and similar facilities. They are controlling the weather, ladies and gentlemen. We've had monsoonal moisture move through the Southern California area from the desert southwest for the past several weeks. It hasn't dumped any noticeable amount of rain, but we do have the humidity, we do have the extreme temperatures. You can see some of the grid pattern up here. You can see the textbook geoengineering. These are not normal flight patterns, folks. If you have FlightAware app on your telephone, you can see that the planes that are flying these are not on the radar, they're not identified, they're not listed. What we have going on here is covert operations by the government and non-governmental organizations that are engaged in weather warfare against the American people. Now you might ask what the purpose of this is. Well, obviously when you're controlling the weather, the maximum effectiveness of controlling the weather could be explained in terms of its effect on the food supply. You know, it's to the advantage of the elite to control the food supply. And how do you do that? By gaining control of the production, including the land. Now, how that's done? Well, it's easy to bankrupt farmers. Most of them are just a bad harvest away from the streets. And these huge agribusiness companies just come in and buy stuff up for 10 cents on the dollar and put GMOs everywhere. And of course that forces people into the compact cities, and I discussed that last night, as there is an agenda to get us into the compact cities, because the more they can cram us into the compact cities, then they can just sit there and herd us up like a bunch of cattle up in Vernon on the way to the slaughterhouse. They can just simply forcibly vaccinate us, and the state has passed laws of California requiring forced vaccination of children. They can irradiate us to whatever power level and frequency they so desire. That's what they've done with the cell phone and the wireless infrastructure everywhere. They're dosing the water in the names of dental health. They're putting all kinds of metallic compounds in the water. They're putting all kinds of toxic halide compounds in the water in the name of disinfecting the water and preventing tooth decay. I don't know why they would put fluoride in the water if it's so good at preventing tooth decay. They ought to be putting it in the Coca-Cola, because that's what everybody's drinking. We also have a situation where if we're forced into these compact cities, which are actually scientific kill grids, and we're forced to eat the frankenfruit that they feed us. You know, I go to Costco once in a while and look at some of the stuff on the shelves in there, and it amazes me that apples can get so big, and strawberries can get so big, and blueberries can get so big, because ever since I was a child I've been growing these things, and I've never seen apples or blueberries or strawberries that size. It's really scary to think that these trees and bushes spend their whole lives hooked up to a fertilizer drip, and that's why they're so gigantic. Ladies and gentlemen, the weather's changing because they're changing the weather. Carbon dioxide's plant food, like I discussed last night. The more CO2 you put into the environment, the better the trees grow, the better the plants grow. This system is a closed system. It's designed by God to compensate for any irregularities or abnormalities in atmospheric conditions that could be caused by wildfires or volcanic eruptions. The world always self-regulates because God created it to do so. What's happening is we're being lied to. The scientific community and the educational establishment is committing scientific fraud to wreck the economy. They've done this in the past. They are going to continue to do this, but at the heart of all this is an intent to re-engineer society. Re-engineer society in what they consider a sustainable manner. And that clearly involves reducing the population. And in doing so, they can gain control and maintain control. You see, the moat around the castle doesn't work with 6.5 billion people. It used to work when they had peasants and serfs that weren't armed and were limited in number. They could keep them starved and deformed and basically under their thumb. Well, that doesn't work when you have hundreds of millions of people with weapons and brains and access to the internet. So they've got to cull us and they've got to control us. What is happening right now, ladies and gentlemen, is right in front of your very eyes. Today is just another typical example of how they stop the rain. And when they stop the rain here, what happens is it ends up raining tremendously somewhere else, because this amount of moisture eventually is going to come down somewhere. And when it doesn't come down where it's supposed to, and it's carried further away, it dumps even heavier when it does. And that's why we have all this extreme weather and flooding. The net result of all this extreme weather and flooding is more draconian legislation for climate control, more draconian legislation over our freedom to travel as they try to restrict our access to fossil fuels and the use of fossil fuels. They're going after refrigeration. They're going after all kinds of industrialization. They've basically deindustrialized the entire state of California. And what's happened now is our unemployment rate is such that we've got people living on tents in the streets. It's so really sickening, folks, that we have our schools training our children to go along with this, and they've got the grown-ups working at the schools acting like Pied Pipers and leading all our children right into all this nonsense. This is Joe Imbriano asking you to open your eyes and ask yourself this question. Why is it not raining on August 2nd, 2017 in Southern California when we have all this moisture in the air? Ladies and gentlemen, look at the lines in the sky. They don't belong there. That is geoengineering. That is the reason we have climate change. CO2 has nothing to do with our weather conditions, folks. The geoengineering, the dispersal of metallic nanoparticles at extremely high altitudes that are being interacted with by radar installations and electromagnetic emissions are what is controlling our weather, folks. This is Joe Imbriano signing out. Thank you.